60 miles east of Puerto Rico, past the cruise ships and tourist beaches, lies an archipelago most travelers never see. Little St. James, 72 acres of white sand and dense vegetation. To sailors passing by, it looked like paradise, a private retreat where the wealthy escaped the world. The man who owned it was Jeffrey Epstein, a financier whose wealth seemed limitless and whose client list read like a directory of power. From the beginning, neighbors on nearby islands noticed something odd. Construction crews arrived in waves. Not the usual contractors, but workers flown in from overseas. Building materials came by barge under tarps. At the island's peak sat a main compound, a sprawling villa with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Below it, guest cottages scattered through the palms, staff quarters hidden behind walls. That dome became the island's most recognizable feature and its deepest mystery. Officially, Epstein called it a music room, but workers who'd been inside said the building had almost no interior. Beneath the surface, something more elaborate was taking shape. Contractors later testified to digging extensive tunnels. Not simple utility lines, but corridors wide enough to walk through, connecting buildings across the island. One contractor described a network that ran from the main house to the temple, with branches to at least 2 other structures. The walls were reinforced concrete. Ventilation systems were industrial grade. Security on the island was absolute. Every beach had motion sensors. Cameras covered every path. Boats approaching without clearance were met by armed guards. For those cleared to visit, arrival was a ritual. Most came by helicopter, landing on a pad near the main house. The entire island spans just 72 acres, smaller than most college campuses, yet large enough to hide everything. The guest list was astonishing. Flight logs obtained through Freedom of Information requests documented hundreds of trips. Former presidents, British royalty, tech billionaires, Hollywood celebrities, scientists, and academics. But not everyone who visited knew what they were walking into. Some guests described lavish meals and stimulating conversation. By 2005, rumors about the island had begun to circulate. Local Virgin Islands residents whispered about young girls arriving on planes. Then, in 2006, everything shifted. A 14-year-old girl in Palm Beach, Florida told police that a wealthy man had paid her for a massage that turned into abuse. She named Jeffrey Epstein. The Palm Beach police launched an investigation. What they uncovered was a pattern. Dozens of girls, some as young as 14, recruited from local high schools, offered $200 for a massage. But Little St. James remained largely outside the investigation's reach. The island sat in federal territory. U.S. waters, but under Virgin Islands jurisdiction. Subpoenas were harder to enforce. Witnesses were harder to reach. In 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty to state charges in Florida, a deal that stunned prosecutors and victims alike. 18 months in a county jail with work release privileges. The deal was orchestrated by Alexander Acosta, then U.S. attorney for Southern Florida. And Little St. James? Activity there barely slowed. Some victims later said the island was central to the operation, a place beyond the reach of police, beyond the scrutiny of neighbors, where Epstein felt untouchable. 1998 go-to. Epstein purchases Little St. James v. 2003 go-to. Major construction phase begins v. 2008 go-to. First conviction, island activity continues v. 2019 go-to. Epstein's arrest and death. Another described being led through the underground tunnels, emerging in the temple building where she said she was photographed. The images, she was told, were for Epstein's private collection. By 2016, the island had taken on a mythic quality in certain circles. Whispered about in conspiracy forums, referenced in coded language by investigative journalists who couldn't prove their suspicions. Then on July 6, 2019, everything changed. Jeffrey Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, returning from Paris on his private jet. The arrest was the culmination of a new investigation led by the Southern District of New York. Prosecutors had spent months interviewing victims, many now adults, willing to testify. Within hours of the arrest, FBI agents executed search warrants on Little St. James. Helicopters descended on the compound. Boats surrounded the shoreline. What they discovered inside matched the victims' accounts with chilling precision. Massage tables in multiple bedrooms, a photograph collection that investigators described as deeply disturbing. The victims who testified painted a consistent picture. Many were recruited as teenagers, 14, 15, 16 years old, through a network of associates who promised modeling opportunities, tuition money, or simply cash for a massage. One survivor, Virginia Giuffre, became the most prominent voice. She alleged she was trafficked to the island repeatedly between 2000 and 2002, forced to have sex with Epstein and his associates. She named names: British royalty, American politicians, business executives, scientists. She described being photographed with them, dining with them, being instructed by Ghislaine Maxwell on how to please them. Some denied the allegations. The flight logs became crucial evidence. Epstein's pilots kept meticulous records of every trip on his private jets, a Boeing 727 he called the Lolita Express and a smaller Gulfstream. Investigators cross-referenced the logs with victim testimony. Survivors remembered specific flights, specific passengers, specific dates. One woman recalled sitting across from a former president. What he bought for under $8 million in 1998 would be valued at over $22 million 2 decades later. But the true cost was ink. The island staff were subpoenaed: maintenance workers, housekeepers, boat captains. Many invoked their Fifth Amendment rights. Some cooperated, describing a culture of silence and willful blindness. One former employee told investigators about the security protocols. Visitors were warned: no phones with cameras, no discussing what happened on the island, no outside communication during stays. On August 10th, 2019, just 36 days after his arrest, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. The official cause: suicide by hanging. He was in a special housing unit, supposedly under suicide watch after a previous incident. But that night, both guards assigned to check on him every 30 minutes fell asleep. The autopsy found fractures in his neck consistent with suicide, but also consistent, one forensic pathologist noted, with homicidal strangulation. The bedsheet he allegedly used was strong enough. Conspiracy theories exploded. Some believed powerful associates silenced him to protect their secrets. Others pointed to the failures as evidence of deliberate neglect. Attorney General William Barr called the circumstances suspicious. Investigations were launched. His death meant he would never stand trial. Victims would never confront him in court. The full scope of what happened on Little St. James, who visited, who knew, who participated, would never be fully exposed. But the investigation didn't end. Federal prosecutors shifted their focus to Ghislaine Maxwell. For months, she vanished, hiding in safe houses across the country. The charges mirrored the pattern on the island: sex trafficking of minors, conspiracy, perjury. Prosecutors alleged she recruited underage girls, groomed them, and participated in the abuse. 4 survivors testified. They described Maxwell as charming at first, friendly, reassuring, almost maternal. Then the manipulation began. She normalized the abuse, instructed them on what Epstein liked, sometimes participated herself. The entire island spans 72 acres, large enough to hide anything. The jury deliberated for 5 days. On December 29th, 2021, they returned guilty verdicts on 5 of 6 counts, including sex trafficking of a minor. The courtroom was silent. In June 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. The judge called her crimes heinous and predatory. Meanwhile, the island itself became a legal battleground. Epstein's estate was valued at over $600 million. Victims filed civil lawsuits seeking compensation. In May 2023, Little St. James was sold to a private buyer for $60 million. The new owner demolished several structures but kept the main villa. But many questions remain unanswered. How many victims were there, truly? Who else knew what was happening and did nothing? Or worse, participated? Be fully revealed. The island itself holds clues that investigators are still analyzing. Beneath the surface of Little St. James, workers had constructed a network of underground spaces. Their purpose unclear, their dimensions unknown. One structure in particular drew intense scrutiny. A peculiar blue and white striped building on the island's highest point, designed to resemble a temple. Locals called it the temple. What happened inside remained a mystery. Flight logs seized by federal prosecutors painted a picture of constant traffic. Between 1998 and 2015, Epstein's private jets made over 700 trips. Many of those named insisted they had no knowledge of any wrongdoing, that their visits were innocent, that they were deceived. Some pointed out they had flown to other destinations, not the island. One pilot who flew Epstein's planes for years testified that he saw underage girls aboard, though he claimed he didn't ask questions. 2019 GWHQ. Epstein arrested at airport. 2019 GWHQ. FBI raids island compound. 2020 GWHQ. Maxwell arrested in hiding. 2021 GWHQ. Maxwell convicted on 5 counts. Former staff members on the island told of strict instructions. Never speak to guests, never look them in the eye, never enter certain rooms. One groundskeeper recalled seeing groups of young women arriving by boat, looking lost and uncomfortable. He was told they were students, guests, assistants. Never the same story twice. He learned not to ask. On August 10th, 2019, federal agents descended on Little St. James. They arrived by boat and helicopter, armed with search warrants and forensic equipment. Neighbors on nearby islands reported seeing smoke rising from Little St. James in the weeks before the raid. Witnesses claimed to have seen fires burning in metal drums, papers being incinerated. But Epstein had not acted alone. Federal prosecutors had long believed he operated with assistance from Ghislaine Maxwell, the British socialite who had been his companion for decades. Maxwell had vanished after Epstein's death, dropping from public view. For months, her whereabouts were unknown. Rumors placed her in Paris, in London, in Brazil. On July 2nd, 2020, FBI agents found her hiding in a remote estate in New Hampshire. She had been living under an assumed name, her phone wrapped in foil to avoid detection. 4 women testified against her at trial. They described being as young as 14 when Maxwell approached them, offering money for massages, insisting it was all harmless. One victim recalled Maxwell measuring her for a school uniform, telling her Epstein liked a certain look. Another described being taken to the island and realizing too late that she couldn't leave. The defense argued that Maxwell was being scapegoated, that she was merely a victim herself, entrapped by a manipulative billionaire. They portrayed her as a woman in love, blind to Epstein's crimes. More than 40 victims came forward, describing abuse spanning 2 decades. On June 28, 2022, Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. The judge called her crimes heinous and predatory. Victims in the courtroom wept. The question lingered, who else knew? Thousands of pages of court documents remain sealed. In late 2023, a federal judge ordered the release of previously sealed depositions and flight logs. The documents named dozens of individuals, though many were already known from earlier reporting. Conspiracy theories proliferated in the void left by official silence. Online forums dissected every photo, every connection, every ambiguous statement. Survivors continue to speak out, demanding accountability. Some have filed civil suits against Epstein's estate, seeking compensation for decades of trauma. Little St. James itself stands mostly abandoned now. The Virgin Islands government has placed liens on the property for back taxes and environmental violations. Plans to sell the island have stalled. In 2023, the estate paid out over $100 million to survivors through a victim compensation fund. More than 150 claims were filed. Yet the larger questions remain unanswered. How did Epstein amass such wealth in the first place? His financial records were opaque, his clients mostly unknown. Yet the larger questions remain unanswered. How did Epstein amass such wealth in the first place? His financial records were opaque, his clients mostly unknown. The island itself became a crime scene. In the months after his arrest, agents scoured every building, every hidden room. What the hard drives contained remains largely sealed. Court filings reference thousands of images, but only a fraction entered the public record. Defense attorneys fought to suppress them. Federal investigators contacted over 150 witnesses in the months following Epstein's death, trying to piece together the full scope of what happened. Meanwhile, the list of names haunted the investigation. Who visited the island? Flight logs offered clues, passenger manifests with initials and aliases. Investigators cross-referenced private jet records, guest books, eyewitness testimony. Among those confirmed to have visited were former presidents, a British royal, tech billionaires, Hollywood directors. Most claimed ignorance of what transpired there. Some admitted to brief social calls, nothing more. The youngest victim was 14. She was flown to the island under the pretense of a modeling opportunity, handed a swimsuit, told to wait by the pool. Epstein arrived an hour later. Her testimony, years later, was devastating. She described a bedroom with mirrors on the ceiling, a massage table, oils laid out in rows. Other victims echoed her account. They spoke of a system, not isolated incidents. Recruiters identified vulnerable girls, runaways, foster children, immigrants. They promised money, opportunity, a way out. The operation relied on enablers. Ghislaine Maxwell was the face of recruitment, the one who gained their trust. But behind her were assistants, pilots, drivers, housekeepers who looked the other way. When Epstein died in his cell in August of 2019, the world erupted. Conspiracy theories flooded social media within minutes. How could the most high-profile inmate in America be left unmonitored? The official ruling was suicide, but doubt lingered. Lawyers for the victims demanded an independent investigation. Some believed Epstein took his own life to escape justice. Ghislaine Maxwell fled. For a year, she evaded capture, moving between safe houses, using encrypted phones, relying on a network of wealthy friends. Her trial began in November of 2021. Prosecutors presented flight logs, photographs, testimony from 4 victims who recounted in chilling detail how Maxwell had groomed them, transported them, delivered them to Epstein. 2019 Gadu. FBI raids Little St. James VO 2020 Godu. Maxwell arrested in New Hampshire VO 2021 Godu. Trial begins in New York VO 2022 Godu. Maxwell sentenced to 20 years. Guilty on 5 of 6 counts. The courtroom gasped. Victims wept. Maxwell sat motionless, her face blank. In June of 2022, the judge sentenced her to 20 years in federal prison. But for many, it felt incomplete. Maxwell was convicted of facilitating abuse, not committing it herself. Little St. James sits abandoned now. The mansion decays in the salt air. Vegetation reclaims the pathways. The temple on the hill, its golden dome tarnished, stands as a monument to delusion and excess. The victims, meanwhile, continue to live with the aftermath. Some have spoken publicly, turning their trauma into advocacy. Others remain anonymous, rebuilding their lives away from the spotlight. The story of Little St. James is a story of power unchecked, of how wealth can buy silence, how fame can deflect scrutiny, how a private island can become a fortress against the law. But it is also a story of resilience. The young women who found the courage to speak, who faced their abusers in court, who refused to be erased. The full truth may never emerge. Too many records were destroyed, too many witnesses have died, too many powerful figures remain protected by lawyers and non-disclosure agreements. For 2 decades, a financier with murky credentials operated a trafficking ring from a private island in the Caribbean. He exploited dozens of girls, some as young as 14. Little St. James remains, a scar on the turquoise water. The island where paradise became prison, where privilege became predation, where the American dream twisted into its darkest inversion. The buildings will crumble. Because in the end, this is not just the story of one man or one island.